There are many aspects of our preliminary film which we developed in the final media product. One of these being the character layout. The character layout in the preliminary task was very simple, with just two characters, the interrogator and the interrogee. In the final task, we have four characters, the antagonist, protagonist, victim, and forensic officer. The antagonist in our final task is a very developed character. This character has an element of good and bad, and he works as a CSI agent with the protagonist. As the antagonist has a split personality, he represents both good and bad within the film, causing the plot twist. The protagonist in the final task is quite similar to the protagonist in the preliminary task. Although in the main task, this character was a key catalyst to all of the action, therefore developing his role. The victim in the main task has developed from the preliminary task, as in the main task we used our female victim to help define and represent gender roles. We also used a forensic officer in our main task, which is a character which was not entirely necessary for the storyline of the film, but including this character heightened the dramatic element overall, also adding a realistic and professional nature to our film compared to the preliminary task. As well as characters, the mise-en-scène was much more developed in our main task. The use of the forensic officer in full costume and the police tape made the film much more realistic overall, compared to the main, much more basic mise-en-scène in the preliminary task. The location of our main task was very different to the location of our preliminary task. For the main task, we chose a very specific location based around the plot of our film. In comparison, for the preliminary task, we did not link the location and the storyline, which in turn made the film less dramatic. The location of an isolated bridge added a sinister feel to our film, as well as making the footage for our film much more creative and interesting. When paired with the plot, the location we chose would be the realistic location for a murder scene. Therefore, using this plot made the film much more relatable and understandable. We incorporated a much more developed variety of camera shots in our final media product. For example, we used a shot which paired with the timing of the music in order to create the climax in our film. This pan-away shot from our protagonist after the phone call with the antagonist was inspired by a shot in the film Reservoir Dogs. This camera shot in the film became much more developed than the shots in the preliminary task, mainly due to the research and planning that we did as a group into camera shots from different iconic thriller films. We also used high and low angle shots in order to represent the powerful and weak symbols within the film. A distinct establishing shot has been used at the beginning of our film, and from then the film cuts to the past. Once the film reverts back to the present day is re-begun with the exact same establishing shot that the film begins with. This adds to the effect of the change in time within our film, helping the audience to understand the time concepts within the film. This is a feature which we did not include in the preliminary task, showing how we have developed the creativity of the shots and the plot of our final film when compared to the preliminary task. The editing of the final media product has also improved since our preliminary task. For example, the section of the phone call dialogue in our film has been edited carefully in order to create cross-cutting editing. The dialogue was shot in full from each person, then cut and moved in order to create a full conversation. Cross-cutting at the correct times from each person in order to maintain continuity. There were elements of the preliminary task which we incorporated into the main task, such as the use of sound effects to enhance elements such as a phone ringing. These small details add to the extra effect to the film, making it flow much more naturally and realistically. On the other hand, there were also elements of the editing which we improved. We used different tones on our clip in order to show time sequence. Although the preliminary task was edited into black and white, we developed this idea by having half of the final task in black and white, with the other half in natural colour in order to show past and present within the film. The titles of our final task were also much more developed and overall compared to the preliminary task, which makes the film have a serious nature, developing the tension compared to within the preliminary task. Overall, the development of all these elements in turn developed the overall effect and realism behind the film. Our final media product was researched, filmed, and edited in much more detail than the preliminary task. Due to the research and planning we carried out, we were also able to incorporate many new elements into the film, which caused the film to have a much better and more developed dramatic effect overall.